Now, if you're just doing brisket, for me, I do brisket, with my Texas roots, it's no drama for me. But as you add each protein, the complexity does go up. So how can our teams practice? Obviously, because there's an expense, if you're buying protein and all that, and you do 10 practices, you're basically spending a lot of money to practice. Are there any tips and tricks? Because, obviously now you've got 5 proteins and, you may not have done that before until you get there on the day. So what advice, what tips and tricks would you have in prepping for that?
Yeah, look, I don't have advice on how to get cheap meat. That's a tricky one. I mean, I get what you're saying. Let's say everyone's doing one brisket, they're doing a pork shoulder, they're doing 2 or 3 racks of pork ribs, lamb shoulder and some lamb racks, and some chicken. I would say there'd be almost $500 worth of meat there, good quality meat, and I would suggest buy the best you can afford because it does make a difference. However, in saying that, chicken wings is probably, if you are brand new to this and you haven't done a lot of competition barbecue before, I'd expect a few teams are like that. I'd suggest you go and buy whatever your chicken hand is going to be. Go do that. Do that every day, every spare day you've got up until the competition, and then maybe add in another element. So doing some pork ribs, try and do a lamb shoulder. So try and do as much as you can. No one's going to be able to afford 10 briskets to practice on up until the event. But if you go and speak to Michael at Riverway Meats, I'm sure he could probably cut you down some brisket, perhaps give you just a point to test, try. Or maybe even, try and just get a flat and try and cook that. It's not the same thing, but at least it'll give you an opportunity to, test your flavour profiles. Someone's just asked a question there, flavour profiles and the cuts of meat, and I'll go through that in a moment. But get your friends around, because at the end of the day, the judges, although they're trained and they're given a course which explains what's right and what's wrong, at the end of the day, food is subjective and the judging system is subjective. So what I like might not necessarily be what my best mate likes. So it's a law of averages that everyone on the table gives you an average score and that's your final score. So it works like that with your mates. So I would suggest inviting, especially if you're going to do a whole brisket. A whole brisket in my mind could feed, up to 20 people. So I'd invite as many mates around as you can. Maybe use a few different sauces. You can even use different rubs on the brisket and try and get people to try different types and different flavour profiles and get them to tell you what their favourite piece of brisket is with what sauce. So you might be using a certain sauce on one as opposed to another, and get the general consensus which one they like. That, in theory, should give you a better chance when it comes to the judging table.
Now, some of the teams I've spoken to is, they've got 4 or 5 members, and when you meet them, they go, "I'm the chicken guy. I'm the pork guy. I'm the brisket guy."
Yep.
So with Badass Barbecue, is that how you guys roll at each, are you using on the day, do you have multiple smokers and each of you has got 1 or 2 proteins that you're responsible for, or have you got a big smoker and everybody's using it? How do you guys run?
We've got a full recipe now after 4 years of competing, which we stick to. So we've got certain sauces we use. They haven't changed a lot. And I'll come back to flavour profiles in a moment, in particular with Townsville being first comp, and what flavour profiles do you think will work? And I've got a couple up my sleeve which I'll pass on to you guys. But what I'm thinking is, with Badass Barbecue, the way we've evolved, Mitch is a trained chef. He's a pub chef and has always been a chef. I'm an outdoor cooking nut, so I'm sort of like the utility that does all the other stuff, including the washing up. I'm not ashamed to say that I do the washing up, but lighting fires and things like that and keeping temperature under control. And Mitch quite often, and this is something I suggest to all teams, Mitch has the finesse to do the hand-in box. So he makes sure it looks pretty at the end of the day. So we always let him go to sleep, and so that he's fresh for when we do the hand-ins, because there's nothing worse than dropping meat into the box and it looks terrible. So that's probably, I think, competition barbecue, a lot of it is winning on the chopping board. At the end of the day, everyone can cook a brisket to a certain standard, and you really wow people with appearance. And that's the first score that people will give on the judges card. It goes appearance, then texture or mouthfeel, if you like, and then the last one is taste. Whilst taste is the highest rated score, it's times by 3. out of 10. Texture times by 2, and appearance is only 1. But I still think appearance is so important, because if you wow the judges, you do eat with your eyes first. If they put a 10 in that box, it's very hard for them to put a 6 in the next box. In their mind, mentally, if they put a 10 in that first box, they're much likely to give you a high score in the next one. And we've seen over the years, very rare that you get a 10 and then you get a 6. You're likely to get a 9. And it just goes through, people are excited about what they've seen and they're excited to eat it. Look, don't get me wrong, if it tastes like crap, they're going to give you a 6. But you're off to a good start if you get a 10 in that first box. Likewise, if it looks terrible and they sort of, oh, do you really want to eat that? And they give you a 6, you're probably not likely to get a 10 in the next box. So that's something to think about, really making sure the presentation looks good. Now, there's a couple of Facebook groups on the internet, on Facebook rather, that has like competition hand-in boxes and rate my box and all that sort of stuff. And people post all their information about what they did, what proteins they cooked, and how it looks at the end. It's good resources. If you don't know what a competition box looks like, you should get on there and have a look. But also there's Comp Barbecue hashtag on Instagram. Plenty of boxes there to have a look at. And people are getting really creative with it. And like I say, don't take that as gospel. If you've got another idea, as long as it complies to the rules, I suggest you give it a go. Because at the end of the day, these judges in Townsville, there'll only be a few of them that have judged before. And you want to make sure that, you impress them. So I might move on to this first question. It's a good one.
Actually, Michael, while we're there, can we talk about the hand-in boxes and the parsley? So we had a little bit of confusion up here, which I think we've handled now, and Adam's clarified for us about the hand-in box and the greens. We can use parsley. I believe we can use kale. I forget what the third lettuce. But with the kale, it's got to be all green.
It does.
So you're talking about. So obviously, there's some standards. We're using the white, hand-in boxes. We've got the thing. So how can you be creative when you've got that? You've got to meet those requirements. So how do you stay within the guidelines and be creative and be visually appealing without breaking the rules?
Okay, so the first one is, let's just use chicken, for example. Chicken as the first hand-in. So let's say you want to do chicken wings. Now, I know for a fact that a lot of the guys use the mid-wings, which are they call them mid-wings, but they're they're the middle part of the chicken wing. Yeah. Chicken nibble, they call them in New Zealand. So that sort of middle section, that's the cut you get. So you can buy whole wings and cut them down yourself. So you've got the other parts you can have a snack on. But what I think, people sort of go, all right, I've got to put a minimum of 6 in. So what they do is they put 6 in. And what that says to me is that's great, well done, but so is everyone else. So my suggestion would be maybe look at putting 7 in, or putting 8 in, or even putting 10 in if you can fit them in and make them look visually appealing. The judges like to eat as much as they can. If they really like your box, they'll eat more, and that could eventuate in a higher score. So how should parsley look in the box? Look, there's not really, I'll just put this up on the screen now. I'm not sure if everyone will be able to see it. There's not much creativity you can add to how parsley looks. You just want to try and make it look neat and tidy. So I'm just going to put this up. I don't know if this will come up. Everyone see that?
Yes.
So I haven't quite finished there, but you can see it sort of, there's not too much discoloration. It looks fairly flat. And once I get to the end and get that all done, on the side there, I'll have sort of a little bit of, what do you call it, edges that don't look quite accurate. Once the meat's in the box, then I sort of poke some down around the edges to make it look sort of very square. It's probably not my best go at it, but it's a good representation of, you don't want stalks sticking up. You want it all sort of face down. Now, you can also use kale in this event, I believe.
Yes.
So kale's fine. We've actually started using kale. We've won trophies. We won first place. Won first place in New Zealand for lamb, which was a huge achievement. So that says to us that there's no differentiation between kale and parsley. One thing I would say is easier to put kale in. If you get good kale, sort of putting it in the box is quite easy because it's a bigger piece. I'm going to show you some kale here. Again, hopefully this comes through on the share, but this is quite cool. Did that come up there?
Yeah, we can see that.
That's the kale box that we did. I'm pretty sure that looks like New Zealand. Again, I want to try and get the edges as square as possible. Now, you'll notice we've got a wet paper towel over the top. That's because we make up our boxes ahead of time. So when all the meat's on, there's nothing to do. We don't go out drinking beers with the crowd, despite what everyone says. We actually sit there and we get our boxes ready. We put a wet paper towel over the top, which keeps it nice and green and looking fresh, so it doesn't dry out. So we'll have all our boxes stacked up, ready to go. So at, hand in time, we're not running around trying to find, where our boxes are and getting them ready. We have that ready to go. So we open the box, meat goes in, and off it goes. And it helps us heaps being ahead of time like that. So I'd suggest you put someone in charge of that, and they can delegate to anyone who's standing around doing nothing, get on the parsley box. A good parsley box can take up to half an hour to do. And it is worth it, I think. If you've got parsley and stalks sticking out, it all looks terrible. I don't think it's as visually appealing to the judges.